Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country, powered by Backcourt Marketing. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale on yet another victorious Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever you're listening to this. It's probably a victorious one, especially when it comes to men's basketball. Hope I didn't jinx us for the weekend. Shane, a lot of exciting things going on. We have two guests on the show today. We have Aaron Torres, who's our buddy, Fox Sports Radio. You can check him out at Torres on Arizona, at Aaron_Torres as well on Twitter. He knows a little bit of everything about every college basketball and college football. He's a genius when it comes to that.
And I'll mention real quick, Eric, he made his first trip to McHale Center for the UCLA game. So we're excited to talk to him about that experience.
Yes. And then Brian Brigger, who is the in charge of the uniforms at McHale Center, also going to join us. And we're going to talk about our new uniforms on the way. And what's it like working for this team? So a lot of cool stuff on this show. But Shane, we have our first segment called Buy or Sell, which I'm sure a lot of you listening are familiar with. But we are very pleased to have a new sponsor. And both Shane and I have these very cool ice shakers.
Yeah. I got to tell you, Eric, I put some ice water in this a few hours ago, just to give it a test to see if it would stay cold. It stays cold. So, and if I didn't, I wouldn't say a word. Ice shakers are awesome. If you're watching the video, here's the other one. Big thanks to Chris Gronkowski for sending out this swag. We've also heard that Wildcat Country ice shakers may be available soon on the Ice Shaker website. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. How cool is that? Like, you guys got to buy one of these. These things are legit. I was thinking, I'm going to buy one of these. Fortunately, they're sponsoring, part of Wildcat Country, and we got these cool things. These are awesome. And as Shane said, it stays cold. I put my water in here an hour ago and it's still good to go. So thanks to Chris Gronkowski. Check them out, iceshaker.com. And now this is Buy or Sell, presented by Ice Shaker. And Shane, we're going to start with number one. After another victorious weekend where Arizona swept the Washington schools, I would say, we'll start this. Number one, Arizona is guaranteed to be a number one seed in the NCAA tournament if they lose no more than one game the rest of the way. Buy or sell that?
Buy it. I think it if it's more than one, I know we'll get into that. Then it depends on who it's against. One more, I think they're fine. You consider, Eric, 9 of the top 14 ranked teams last week in all of college basketball lost. Mm-hmm. Arizona's in very good shape right now. I would say that they're probably number 3 overall behind Gonzaga and Auburn in the ranking, in the seeding, even though, and I made a case on Twitter the other day for Arizona being ahead of Auburn because they're ahead of Auburn in every metric out there. But I think that's where they would be voted right now. I think there are 3 teams securely in the 1 seed category right now. And then there's a wild grab for the 4th seed. I think that's where we're at. I think that Arizona could sustain 1 loss to whoever the rest of the way and still get in as a 1 seed. Absolutely.
Oh, I think it's a lock. I think if Arizona loses no more than one game, if let's say they were to lose to USC on March 1st and then win the Pac-12 tournament, Arizona is 100% a 1 seed, and that would be fantastic. Now let's go on to the next question. 1B, or we'll do 1A. If the Wildcats lose once more in the regular season and then in the Pac-12 tournament, so 2 more losses, the number 2 seed in the West region is a virtual lock, especially with UCLA having been on a 3-game losing streak. Do you buy or sell that?
As a lock, no, I would sell it. I think it depends on who the losses are to. For example, if Arizona loses 1 more regular season game, and that happens to be at USC, which would not be a bad loss at all, and then they go to the Pac-12 championship game and then lose to UCLA or USC, I think that still might be enough to get them a 1 seed, because that you're looking at an 18-2 conference record, which is insanely good. And then a trip to the Pac-12 tournament, which would more than likely include another quad 1 victory. Unless Gonzaga, Auburn, and a couple other teams win out, I think Arizona would probably still be a 1, albeit not in the West, but I think they would probably still be 1 in that case. Now, if they lose to a bad team, like they lose at Utah, and then they lose in the first round of the Pac-12 tournament, the semifinals, then it may be a different story. So I think that comes with a caveat. So is it a lock? Absolutely not. I think it depends on who those losses are to and when.
All right. I hate to buy this, but I'm going to. I think it is a lock. Gonzaga's not losing again, Shane. And even if they lose again, they're probably, in the regular season, they're probably still in good enough position to hold that 1 seed. Their non-conference schedule was good enough in the non-conference, in the earlier season. Easy for me to talk today. But I think that Gonzaga probably holds on to the 1 seed with only one more loss. I think Arizona, if they lose 2 or more games, I think we're looking at the number 2 seed in the West, which I know you don't like. To me right now, the best case scenario for Arizona is to be the 1 seed in the Midwest. I think it's in Chicago is where the regional is. Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously bad memories from the Illinois game in 05, but I mean, I would take that. There's a huge contingent of Wildcats in Illinois.
What I would say though also, Eric, is don't give the selection committee an opportunity or a good reason to put them in the same region as Gonzaga, because they will do it. They love doing that sort of thing.
Yes,
because Tommy Lloyd's got his history. You remember Sean Miller being paired with Xavier more than once. Bobby Hurley paired with Buffalo. They love pulling that stuff, and it's easy to justify because they're both in the West. So Arizona would I think if they're on that 1-2 fence, I think the committee would be tempted to put them 2 because it just makes it's an easier situation. Hey, we put Arizona out West. Oh, it just so happens to be Tommy Lloyd against his former team if it gets that far.
All right, so let's go to question 1B, since we're doing it a little bit differently here on Buy or Sell, presented by Ice Shaker. If Gonzaga hasn't played anybody because of their, I mean, no offense to the WAC, but they really haven't played anybody. I mean, USF and
it's the West Coast Conference, not the WAC.
Sorry,
you've done that 2 straight weeks.
Yes,
you're thinking GCU.
Yes, thank you. All right, in the WCC, you've got USF, you've got BYU, you've got St. Mary's. I mean, there's nothing that great there. Gonzaga hasn't played anybody in months. If Arizona were to win out, shouldn't they surpass Gonzaga as the number 1 seed in the West? Buy or sell?
If that includes a Pac-12 tournament championship with wins over UCLA and
at USC.
Yeah, at USC would be a quad 1 win. Then presumably 1, maybe 2 more in the Pac-12 tournament. Yes, I think they should pass Gonzaga. They're right behind Gonzaga in every metric, in net, in Ken Palm, in Sager, and in BPI. As of this recording, Arizona is number 2 and Gonzaga is number 1. I have to think that there's enough quality wins there for Arizona to leapfrog Gonzaga. Now, Gonzaga did just beat a ranked St. Mary's team. They'll probably play him again in the WCC tournament. San Francisco is not bad. So I don't think it's as cut and dry as you might think, but I like Arizona's chances to leapfrog Gonzaga if they win out, and that includes a win over at least UCLA or USC in the Pac-12 tournament.
Question 1C, I'm just throwing this one in there, and this does not count as our official bonus question.
Good.
I saw something on Twitter. This was interesting. Do you think the Pac-12 should consider Gonzaga as a future expansion candidate for basketball? Buy or sell?
If they're willing, sure. Is that, I don't even know if that's a possibility. Do you know something I don't?
No, I saw that. There's something on Twitter that I saw earlier this week about, Gonzaga saying, hey, we want to go to the Pac-12. I mean, it'd be fun. You got a rivalry with Washington State right there. That's right down the road. I don't know who else they would add to make it a 14-team conference schedule, but why not for basketball? I mean, I think it'd be a great move for the Pac-12, not knowing about the academic standards or whatnot.
No, I agree. Any additional chances that Arizona and other teams have to play good competition in conference play, I'm all for it, because that's really been lacking over the last few years. Fortunately, Arizona plays UCLA and USC twice, but beyond that, Oregon maybe. At Washington State was a decent test, but really over the last several years, the biggest tests you're going to get are in non-conference. And then you have a couple months in between where you're not playing any of those good teams. So I think the more battle tested you can be during conference play and going to the NCAA tournament, I'm absolutely all for that.
All right. So question 2, which is actually question 4 here in Buy or Sell. So we've seen the last 3 games all on the road, Shane. Arizona has started off miserably against ASU, Washington State, and Washington. Are these slow starts a reason for long-term concern, or are you selling that notion?
I'm going to buy and sell this one. Let me explain. Okay. I'm going to buy in that it is a concern. And if they continue to do that in the NCAA tournament, they're not going to be able to come back from 15 down against a Gonzaga or Baylor or against a number of other teams. With that said, I'm selling it in the sense that, number one, most of these slow starts have come against bad teams, the exception of Tennessee. And they came back, they tied that game too. But I think that this team, as cocky as they are, and you talked about it last week after your trip to ASU, you're hearing them talking on the court. They really are a cocky group. I think that comes with a little bit of swagger going into games against teams they should beat. And I think for better or for worse, this is who they are. I think, and the other part of that is they're going to get those teams' best shot, and they're going to come out swinging and the crowd's going to be crazy, and then reality sets in. So that's part of it. But I also think that this team, it's maybe a benefit, because if they do happen to fall behind, later in the season or in a NCAA tournament game, they know for certain they can come back, and they can come back quick. And I think having that confidence, like Ted Robinson mentioned the other week, knowing that they're able to make that leap, because a lot of teams will panic when they get behind and then they'll get out of doing what they do. Arizona continues to do what they do. They stay with it. I think Tommy Lloyd is a big reason for that. And they're able to dig themselves out of ditches and do it pretty quickly. Now, against better teams, I'm a little more concerned, but I guess, Eric, I'm not as concerned about it happening against better teams, because I think they're going to be more awake and take those teams a little more seriously, if that makes sense.
All right, so I'm going to sell this notion, and let me give a little historical context, at least in my opinion, for wanting to sell. So I look at the 2018 Arizona team that against Buffalo in the tournament. They got down early and they got barraged, and they just couldn't defend the three-point line. Yeah. This team is different. This team, I was concerned it was 14-1 against ASU, and you're like, what's going on here? And the next thing you know, it was like 5 minutes later, and we're tied. This team just has a way they stay calmer than other teams do, than former Arizona teams do. You look at that 2018 team, they completely panicked against Buffalo, didn't play any perimeter defense and got rocked the whole game and never even made a run. So this is where right now I'm not concerned. I guess the only mild issue I would have is this has happened 3 games in a row on the road. Let's see if it happens at home. Not that Arizona is going to be playing on the road in the tournament. I mean, let's be honest, it's neutral site games, and I would assume that most of the fans in the arena would be rooting for Arizona, right? At least for probably the first 3 rounds of games. Who knows what they would play and who they would play in the Elite Eight. But just my opinion there, I am not concerned about, so I'm going to sell that. All right, number 5. So College Game Day is coming to McHale Center this weekend. Mm-hmm. Is this a good thing, as I think it is? Are you going to buy that it's a good thing for the program and the conference, or are you going to say are you going to sell it because of what ESPN has done to Arizona's program?
No, I'll absolutely buy it. It's great national attention. There's no way around that. Has ESPN been unfair to Arizona on a number of levels? Absolutely. And, some guys in particular we've mentioned, we don't have to go down the list.
Schleybaugh, Lunardi.
I have a feeling Mark Schleybaugh is not going to make the trip to Tucson.
No.
Although I would love to see it, but I don't think it's going to happen. But no, it's fantastic. I mean, the university's promoting it. They make players available to ESPN. You can't hold grudges like that. From a professional perspective, ESPN is still the worldwide leader, et cetera, et cetera. And how often do they visit the Pac-12 in basketball, or even in football season these days? So I'm all for it. It's been a while since they've come. I'm trying to remember the last time they came for a men's basketball game.
UCLA a few years ago.
I remember they came way back when Kyle Fogg and Nick Johnson were both there, but they've come more recently than that.
They came in 2018 against UCLA. Somebody might want to correct.
Those who are listening, let us know.
Yeah.
But no, in terms of publicity, it's a universal positive. I'm just still bitter about ESPN, but that's my thing.
All right. You know what I'm going to sell as part of this? The game time. 8:00, really, ESPN? You're doing your College Game Day game at 10 Eastern? It's stupid. Having College Game Day, I'm buying that all day, every day. Love it in football. Been there both times in football. Basketball, it's awesome. But a 10 p.m. Eastern start, 8:00 local time, it's just stupid. I mean, it makes no sense for your quote-unquote game of the week. So I am going to sell that part of it. Still a pretty cool exposure, though. All right. This is your bonus question, Shane. You have no idea what I'm going to ask here.
No.
Will you buy or sell the notion that the NCAA Coach of the Year race is over? Tommy Lloyd should be handed the trophy right now. Buy or sell?
I'll sell that it's over. I'll buy that it's him right now.
It should be over.
They still got some work. They still got some work to do. Arizona still got some work to do. They got 7. I think it's fine. Look, I think it's fine to talk about NCAA tournament and 1 seeds and all that, even though I think some listeners are like, why are y'all talking about this yet? We're 2/3 of the way through the conference season. But with that said, there's still time for this team to lose a few games. So if they stay on the same path, if they go 18-2 in conference play and they win the Pac-12 tournament, I think he's hands down Coach of the Year when you consider the expectations and the situation versus the results. I think there are several other guys you could mention in there, including Bruce Pearl. But I think what Tommy Lloyd has done with this group in his first season, with a team that was unranked for a reason, because that they did lose quite a few guys. I think Matt Milbach mentioned last week. Think about all the guys who were on their team last season who are doing great elsewhere, and even without all those guys, they're winning. I think the question you have to ask is, could Sean Miller have gotten the same thing out of these guys?
No.
I'm skeptical. I'm going to leave it at that. So I don't know. I don't think the race is over. But I know I am biased, but I think Tommy Lloyd is the coach of the year at this moment. Yes.
Easily. No doubt about it. It should be unanimous. I'm just going to tell you that. I'm buy. I want to thank Ice Shaker being our new sponsor of Buy or Sell. Check them out, iceshaker.com. And sooner or later, if you are watching the video, these awesome, we have a multicolored one and we have a black and white one that Shane is holding up right now that should be available hopefully on Ice Shaker's website in the coming weeks. Coming up next, Aaron Torres, college basketball insider, and Brian Brigger, the EMOY. You will find out what that means here on Wildcat Country, powered by Backcourt Marketing. Shane, always glad to have one of our favorite guests on the program, someone who is outspoken and never shy to express his opinion, the great Aaron Torres, college basketball insider. Check him out, not only at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, but at Torres on Arizona, which is an excellent account that always gives great opinions, way better than mine at on Twitter. But okay, that's beside the point. Aaron, glad to have you. You were at the Arizona UCLA game at McKale Center a few weeks ago, your first time at McKale Center. Just give us your thoughts on the overall experience.
Yeah, it was really fun. I was in Tucson for a few days. I mean, I came down, watch practice on, I guess it was Wednesday before that UCLA game. And then, I didn't really kind of cover it the way that I normally would. My wife had a little time off of work, so she ended up making the trip. And then I kind of asked around, and I kind of sat in the stands like everybody else. So it was really fun. It was obviously, look, the atmosphere was incredible. You could feel the buzz really on campus, even like the day before. Like you could tell that it was a big week for the program. It was a big week for the team. It was a big week for credibility. I mean, it's kind of easy to forget now, but it was a couple days after the first UCLA game that did not go well. And so, that was the front end of what is now a 5-game win streak. But at that time, there was real like, okay, if we lose this game, we have a lot. We think we're really good, but if we don't take care of business tomorrow night against UCLA or tonight against UCLA, we might have some problems. And so it was an unbelievable atmosphere. I had a blast. I mean, like I said, I was in town for about 2.5 days, 3 days, and the atmosphere was incredible. Obviously, there was some incidents after the game that I wasn't even aware of. That's how incredible the atmosphere was clearly the fans got to the UCLA players in some way, shape, or form, but overall, it was just an awesome experience. First time I've been to Tucson. Definitely want to get back for some more games soon. Obviously, maybe cover it more, in a traditional way, kind of get a little bit closer to the court and get some access to the players and coaches after the games and all that stuff. But it was a real blast. I had a really good time and a real good time. I will say this. I didn't realize it got so cold in Tucson. It was like 26 degrees one night when I was there. It was like record lows when I was there. So, I know it's like a super cliche, but it was cold outside, but it was rocking in the McKale Center when I was there on Thursday night. So
I do remember when I went to school there, we did get a smattering of snow, and it was like the front page headline everywhere because that just never happened. So
it was cold enough. It was cold enough. It was we didn't get any snow, but yeah, it was kind of crazy. I didn't realize it was going to get so cold, and I'm told it's been lovely the last few days since I left. But when I was there, it was in the 40s during the day, and it was in the 20s at night. But other than that, and even that, I mean, the sun was out. I mean, let's be honest, the sun was out. The Wildcats won. I mean, what is there to really complain about?
Pretty good day. So, Aaron, I know you listed, I believe, 5 teams that you believe are current championship contenders, and you listed Arizona as one of those 5. Eric and I have talked about it. I think we both believe that Arizona is a championship contender. Why do you believe they are?
Yeah, first of all, I would say this. I think the conversation about championship teams every year, we do this thing every year in the media where, it's so wide open and anyone can win it and all that stuff. Well, and I throw this stat around all the time. I think it blows people away, is that since 2007, there's been 14 NCAA tournaments played. Obviously, there wasn't one in 2020. And of those 14 tournaments, 11 were won by a number 1 seed. 1 was won by Villanova, which was the top 2 seed in 2016. And they beat, I think, 2 or 3 number 1 seeds to win the championship. So they were clearly really good. And the other 2 were won by My alma mater, actually, UConn with Kemba Walker in 2011, who I know UConn Arizona fans remember well.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one was 2014 with Shabazz Napier. And so the stat I always bring up is that essentially, if you're not a 1 seed or you don't have the definitive best player in the tournament, you're not winning the tournament. And so that's not why I chose those 5 teams. But the point I'm trying to make is I think the amount of teams that can actually win the thing is much smaller than people think. I think we talk about it's so wide open, and that may be true to get to a Final Four. We saw UCLA as an 11 seed last year. We've seen 7, 8, 6 seeds get to the Final Four. But a lot of people forget that when you get to the Final Four, there's still 2 more games to win once you get there. And so when I look at the 5 teams that I referenced, and for context, the 5 that I have are Arizona, Auburn, Duke, Gonzaga, Kentucky. They really kind of do a lot. There's a lot of different things that they do well. Good guard play, good 3-point shooting, good defense. I think the thing that stands out to me, 4 of those 5 teams, sometimes in college basketball, there aren't that many big guys. 4 of those 5 teams have really good rim protection, including Arizona. And I know you guys know this, but I don't think everybody sees the offensive stats with Arizona. I don't think people realize that last time I checked, they're number 2 in the country in field goal percentage defense. So, so to answer your question, Shane, like, they do it on both ends of the court, and we get so mesmerized by how great and how fun they are to watch on offense. I don't think people realize how good they've been defensively as well. And so I know you guys have talked about it a little bit, I'm sure it sounds like, but to me, I think the group of teams that can actually win it. Now, there's a lot of teams that can get to a Final Four, get to an Elite Eight, even get to a championship game. But I think the group that can win it is pretty small. But I think Arizona's absolutely in that group. I absolutely do.
We've talked a lot about this as well, Aaron, the fact that this is a very confident team to the point where there's maybe some arrogance. Eric had some very good seats to the game at ASU a week ago. He said, this team is flat out cocky. Did you get that sense watching them in practice? There's a certain swagger among this group?
Actually, I did. It's a confidence. There's a camaraderie for sure. But I think to that point, Eric, you seeing him in a road game where I know it was probably a lot of Arizona fans there. I mean, I heard the U of A chants throughout the second half. But I think these last 3 games, I mean, again, I was there for the front end. You're at home. It's a revenge game. You just got embarrassed by UCLA. I think I would argue I've been more impressed by what they've done the last 3 games on the road where, you beat 2 ranked teams at home, when the LA schools come to town. But what really has impressed me is, as you said, the confidence, maybe arrogance to think we're going to walk into a really good, like, Washington State's a fringe NCAA tournament team. Like, they're not great, but every night in college basketball, we see good teams, even really good teams, lose to good teams on the road, right? Duke's taken a couple losses on the road this year to kind of fringe NCAA tournament teams. Baylor's taken losses. Purdue, obviously, the other night got destroyed by Michigan, which obviously is good for Arizona fans. But, Purdue's a good team, and they went on the road and they weren't ready and they got embarrassed. And so for Arizona to do what they've done, in my opinion, over the last 3 games on the road, I would argue has been more impressive. Again, I think I've said it a few times now, than what they actually did at home to the UCLA and USC. And so I don't know that I necessarily saw it that night, but I think I've seen it the last 3 games where you turn on the Washington State game and you wonder how much trouble will they have. You turn on the Washington game, and I know they fell down early, and then they rip off whatever the absurd runs were to end the first half and then to end the game total. I mean, I saw John Rothstein tweeted something about, I forget what it was, like a 93-42 run to end the game or something like that.
Like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so to answer your question, I don't know that I saw it that night, but just from a distance watching the last 3 games all on the road, I think I've seen it for sure over these last 3 games or so.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that makes this Arizona team fun, as Shane and I were talking about in the first segment, is when they get behind early, they just don't panic. It's 14-1 against ASU, and the next thing you know, it's tied 5 minutes later, which you don't see from a lot of teams. One thing, though, that stands out about this team is their size. And it's the reason that I personally am not as concerned about the early round games in the NCAA tournament, and knock on wood, I didn't jinx them, but I feel like size matters when it comes to in the tournament. Gonzaga, we've seen in recent years that helps them, and obviously they're loaded once again in the front court. Just explain why a team that has a couple of twin towers is so well suited for the NCAA tournament, in your opinion.
I mean, one, size always matters, but in the NCAA tournament, especially, no, I'm kidding. Terrible joke. So no, man, listen, I think that what stood out to me seeing Arizona in person is not just the bigs, Ballo and Christian Coloco. Their guards are really big. And it's like, imagine being, I don't know, Severe Wheeler from Kentucky, who's 5'9", and you're getting guarded by Dalen Terry. And I know in theory he could match up with Kirk Reese or whatever, but Dalen Terry at 6'5", 6'6" clamps down on you. I mean, that's just a different deal. But no, I mean, I think that is the one thing that stands out to me about all of these teams that I believe are good enough to win it, and even the ones that are kind of on the fringes, Purdue, maybe Baylor to a degree, although they just lost one of their big guys, is that I think it's just such a game changer. One, obviously on offense, I mean, second, third chance opportunities. I think that's what makes Kentucky so good this year is Oscar Tshiebwe is averaging 15 boards a game, 4, 5, 6 offensive rebounds a game. That's just so many extra possessions over the course of the game. But then defensively, it just changes everything where you go back to the UCLA game that I was at, and there was a couple times where Cody Riley caught the ball in the post ready to make a move, and he just had nowhere to go because Christian Coloco has 5-6 inches on him. It's kind of, by the way, it's not just Arizona, Gonzaga. I don't think they're quote unquote better than last year, but I think they might be more complete because Chet Holmgren is able at the rim to block and alter shots that nobody on that roster could do last year. And so to me, that's what really stands out. And Shane, you referenced me kind of going through the 5 teams that I believe can win it all, is that, again, I think we fall in love with watching teams shoot threes and watching teams put up 90 or 100. And I don't claim to be any X's and O's guru, but it's just such a game changer to have guys at the rim that can block shots, that can protect the rim, that can alter shots. I've seen Duke in person this year when they played Gonzaga, Mark Williams' presence for Duke. And I think, again, it goes back to Arizona. It's the same with Christian Coloco. It's the same with Ballo. It's the same with Azuolas Tubelis of just it's just so hard to get points at the rim. And it's super cliche, but listen, by the way, we use all these analytics about, high percentage shots or, threes or baskets at the rim. Well, there's a reason you'd rather, drive and try to attack and either get a layup or get fouled than you want to take a 15-foot jumper, right? Sure. Is that the percentage, the without being an analytics nerd, and I don't have the data to fully quantify what I'm trying to say, but the chances of you getting some kind of points when you can get the ball to the rim or get fouled is a lot better than shooting a 15-foot jumper. And so when you have a Christian Coloco in the lineup, when you have a Azuolas Tubelis, when you have Oumar Ballo, when you sometimes have 2 of them on the court at the same time, when Ben Mathurin is bigger than the guy that he's defending, same with Dalen Terry, I just think it completely changes the dynamic of things for, it changes the dynamic of things for any team. But in the case of Arizona, it obviously changes a lot of things for them. And we've seen it, frankly, throughout most of the season.
I've asked Shane this question many times, and it's always tough at this point in the season to discuss this, but, we have you on every so often, so I thought I would ask you again. You would consider this season a disappointment for Arizona if they didn't advance to which round in the NCAA tournament?
Well, I remember I came on with you guys after Tennessee, and I think we kind of sort of had this conversation is it's so tough. And what's so tough about it is, first-year head coach, and I could be mistaken. I don't believe anybody on the roster has played in the NCAA tournament. So I'm saying that as an outsider. I'm not saying that as an Arizona fan, obviously. It's a really hard tournament to have success in. To me, I think and it's tough, and I think they're going to end up with a number 1 seed. It might not be in the West because of the way Gonzaga's playing. Listen, I would say this. If you're a 2 seed, you lose in the Elite 8, that's one thing. I would say this, okay, I'm dancing around the question. I'll just get to it. If I, as a non-fan, understanding that it's really hard to win tournament games, and it's really hard as things it's really hard with a first-year head coach with a bunch of guys that have never been there before. Obviously, the absolute minimum as an outsider, is the Sweet 16 and realistically the Elite 8. that's not the answer that you guys want to hear. I understand that. I just think it's really hard to ask a coach that's never been there before and a bunch of players that's never been there before to just naturally just be able to handle everything that comes with playing in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, if you lose in the first weekend, there's no doubt it's a disappointment. If you lose on the second weekend, I'd still say in the Sweet 16, you feel like you left something on the table. I'm also looking at it from the perspective of the holistic, beginning to end, where Arizona began the year not even ranked in the top 25 at all. So that's probably not the answer that you wanted, Eric, and I'm sorry I'm letting you down. But I mean, to me, if you don't make it out of the first weekend, there's no doubt it's a disappointment. Go ahead, say what you're going to say. I see you're holding up fingers.
I'm just on 4 fingers. Final 4. I mean, I think Shane said earlier that Arizona's been to what, 5 Elite Eights
since the last time they went to the Final Four in 2001. They've been to 5 Elite Eights, and they haven't advanced. I think 3 times at least. That's come down to the final possession. So
I was at one of those games for sure.
So. Hopefully not Illinois. Hopefully not the Illinois game in 05.
No, I was at the Wisconsin game in 2014.
Oh, God. I thought you were going to say I thought you were going to say the
UConn
game. Yeah.
No, I actually wasn't. I didn't live on the West Coast at that point, but I was at the Wisconsin game in 2014, which you guys can attest. What was it? Final 10 minutes, something like that. It wasn't more than a 1 possession game the entire time, or maybe a 1 point game. I can't remember. I mean, that's one where, it's like just a forgotten, like nobody ever thinks of that as like a relevant, historically great tournament game. But then 2, like it speaks to the narrow margin of the NCAA tournament, of a Final Four. I hate to bring up a guy that gets talked about plenty enough, but like, one more defensive stop, 1 basket. Sean Miller is a Final Four coach. I think there's a completely different perspective on him today than there is otherwise, but that's the reality of the tournament. That's how tough it is. So I guess if you guys aren't in New Orleans with me, first weekend in April, that's a disappointment. Is that if we're not drinking hurricanes the first weekend in April, you're going to be furious, Eric. That's what you're telling me. That's
it. Not furious, but I would be disappointed. How about that?
Sure. No, and listen, what I would say real quick is that one is, I mean, first of all, you have this kind of season. I totally get that. And 2, and I think this is just a metaphor for sports in general. Like we can use it for the Super Bowl. We can use it for whatever. Is like when you have a team that I'm just a believer that there's no such thing as a window for championships. And by the way, especially college basketball, but even like the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Like you were there, like you had the chance right there. Now you got to go back. You're in a conference with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. You may never have a better chance than what you had on Sunday. And I do understand that from that perspective, Eric, when you talk about Arizona is, listen, I think Tommy Lloyd's going to be really good, but I mean, he inherited obviously a really good roster, adult, grown up guys, really not relying on freshmen at all. Basically, I mean, I know he recruited a few guys out of the portal, but for the most part, it's there, it's ready to go. And so I think he's going to be really good. But I mean, I think there's a legitimate argument to be made. This is the best roster that he could potentially ever have. And so you got to take advantage of it. So I understand that element of it. It's tough, right? I mean, I don't know what to say because I just know I've said it 7 times, but first year head coach, guys that haven't been there before, it's just so tough to just ask them to win all of these high leverage games. But I'll tell you this, I don't think anybody's playing better right now at this exact moment than the Wildcats are.
My last question for you, Aaron, and it's a question that Eric asked me in our first segment. Say Gonzaga and Arizona both win out. Does Arizona, with presumably some quality wins in there, maybe more quality wins than Gonzaga would have, would they potentially leapfrog Gonzaga and get that 1 seed out west?
So one thing I don't really claim to be as a bracketologist, like it's so funny because people ask me this all the time, and it's like there's so much that goes into the data. The one thing I will say, the one thing I hate is like the people that make declarative statements like right now in the middle of February, right? Like I heard somebody say not too long ago, well, Duke, I mean, if they lose this, there's no way they can get a number 1. And it's like, really? Like they're 22-4. They have a couple weird losses, like home to Virginia is not a good loss this year, but like, okay, so they win the rest of their regular season games. They win the ACC tournament. They're going to be 30 whatever and 4 going into the NCAA tournament. They're not getting a number 1 seed. Okay, whatever. Listen, I think obviously for Arizona, it comes down to you've already played UCLA twice. How does that USC game go when you go back to the Galen Center? Do you get a win there? Who do you lose to? When do you lose to them? If you lost in the Pac-12? And then I think it just, as you said, it comes down to, Shane, what other people do as well. And I think that's a factor. Like, this time of year, everybody's always asking me like, well, what do I have to do to get like a number 1 seed or a 2 seed or whatever? And it's like, I don't know. Can you tell me what Duke is going to do and what Gonzaga is going to do and what Purdue's going to do and Baylor's going to do and Kansas is going to do? I don't think we can answer that right now. And so to me, I think if they both took losses, we're both looking at 3 losses apiece at that point. Arizona, I think, should get credit for going on the road to Tennessee a couple days before Christmas. Going on the road to UCLA. I think the variables. One thing I will say that the tournament committee is supposed to factor in everything. So they're supposed to factor in injuries, all that sort of stuff. And so when it comes to UCLA, like losing to UCLA when they have a full house, when they haven't had a full house for a month, is supposed to be factored in. Now, I've never been in that room. How much people pay attention, how much they know, how much they care, I don't know. But I would think that if either team takes a loss, I would think that the strength of a lot of Arizona's wins would probably play to their benefit, right? The UCLA win, some of the out-of-conference stuff, the win at Illinois. Listen, I'll say this again. I have no say in the matter. I think true road out-of-conference games should matter, right? Like Kentucky, they just don't schedule road games in the out-of-conference. They had one this year against Notre Dame, but like Calipari's mantra is like, we don't play road games in the NCAA tournament, so I'm not scheduling them on my schedule. And so Arizona going to Tennessee and going to Illinois, I think should be credited for that. Gonzaga, by the way, I could be mistaken. I don't believe they played one true road game in the out-of-conference. It was a bunch of neutral courts and home games and all that stuff. So to answer, again, I keep ducking all your guys' questions. I'm sorry about that. But I just feel I feel like that should matter, that they were willing to go on the road not once but twice to true road, to true Power 5, Power 6 conference teams. And then a point that I've seen you bring up a few times, Shane, is like some of the wins that they have. Like the Wyoming win gets better every single. It's unbelievable how good Wyoming is, and so I think all of that would play into it. I would guess that if each team takes one more loss, I would think Arizona has the edge. But again, I don't claim to be a bracketologist and have all the answers on that stuff.
All right. So, Aaron, people can find you on Twitter, obviously, at Aaron_Torres. They can find you at Torres on Arizona. They can listen to you on Fox Sports Radio, and you do a podcast. Tell us about that and how people can find you.
Yeah. So I do the Aaron Torres podcast. It's kind of like college football, college basketball stuff, whatever's the topics. Wednesday, I will have a very relevant show for Arizona fans. Sean Miller joined me, and we just wrapped shortly before. I don't know if he's done any formal interviews since he was obviously let go. But the three of us talked a lot about him and his tenure when he was still coaching there. Yep. I think he always appreciated that I tried to look at both sides of the story at Arizona. I think you two appreciated that I always looked at both sides of the story. So that'll be Wednesday. Obviously, because it's an ongoing investigation, there's a lot of things that he can't legally talk about, not only for his sake, but for Arizona's sake and all that stuff. But it was a fun interview. We talked a lot about this year's team, recruiting this year's team. He was diplomatic about it, but I think that as Bruce Pearl gets essentially a lifetime extension and as Bill Self has a lifetime extension, I think it's harder for me to see justification in him not coaching college basketball again. Maybe not this year because it's obviously, again, an ongoing investigation with Arizona. But as that wraps, I would think that he would probably get another opportunity down the road. But yeah, I mean, he's doing great work with Jeff Goodman and Rob Dowster on their podcast network feed. And, he chatted with me for a little bit. So I enjoyed speaking with him. Like I said, I think there's things that, he has to atone for and he has atoned for. And I think there's some things that, as the three of us have discussed at length through the years, are factually incorrect that I don't think a lot of people that aren't Arizona fans know. And so, I have no skin in the game, but I hope he gets another opportunity if that's what he wants. But it was a really fun interview. I just wrapped with him a little while ago.
Wow. Right there. Breaking some news right there.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of anything. I haven't heard of Sean actually talking about Arizona this year. So it'll be really, I know he's done some things, but I haven't heard any tidbits of that. So it'll be very interesting to check that out. And tomorrow, where can we find that? Or on Wednesday, where can we find that?
Yeah. So the Aaron Torres podcast, my Twitter feed is at Aaron_Torres. And then as you mentioned, my company has team specific accounts. We have Torres on Arizona, and it is run by a U of A fan. I'm hands off with that. We have a student intern who's running it. He does a great job. He knows way more about Adia Barnes and the women's team. I know he's fired up for baseball. I don't know if you guys cover baseball, but
sure do.
I needed somebody that knew what the hell they were talking about besides a little bit of football and basketball. So we have an intern running that. He's doing a great job. U of A student right now, Torres on Arizona, Aaron_Torres. And then, the Aaron Torres podcast on Wednesday, February 16th. Unless I screw something up technically or my computer dies, and maybe this is a sign that I should back up the interview, Sean Miller will join me for a pretty lengthy interview talking about a lot of different stuff.
Awesome. Really looking forward to hearing that. Always great to catch up with you, Aaron, and I'm sure we'll have you on again before the end of March and get some feedback. Thanks again for joining us.
We'll do a live show from New Orleans. We'll drink some Hurricanes. And then if Arizona isn't in New Orleans, then I don't know when I'll hear from you, Eric. I'll be worried about you at that point. I'll be checking in on you.
I'll be going to hide under a rock, Aaron. Yeah, we'll talk about football next fall. Good to talk to you as always. Shane, we've had a lot of interesting guests on the show in our year and a half since we've brought this back, the reincarnation, but we've never had anyone on to talk uniforms and equipment. But finally, that has changed. Brian Brigger, who is known as EMOY, the Equipment Man, I think of the year, is that right, on Twitter? And he is the director of equipment for the team's McHale operations, I believe. So always glad to have you here, or glad to have you, Brian. My first question, I see on your Twitter that you were in LA. You're a Bengals fan. How are you feeling after that game on Sunday night?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me. I feel okay. We the Bengals made it to that point.
Yep.
And the history of the Bengals over the last 20, 30 years haven't been great. Going into the year, they haven't won a playoff game in 31 years. They've never won a road playoff game and accomplished both those things this year and made it to the Super Bowl. So can't hang your head too low. It was a competitive game. So happy, sad, all at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Thanks. Like Eric said, thanks for joining us. As a Cardinals fan and a Bills fan, I feel your pain and then some. So no, you don't have to explain how you're feeling, but I'm glad you got a chance to go. You and Ryan Reynolds. And I think, by the way, the other Ryan Reynolds was also there with Will Ferrell, as fate would have it. So
yeah, there was a lot of famous people. They didn't put Will or Ryan up on the screen, but I'm sure they were.
I guess they were down the list somewhere. That tells you how many famous people there were. But glad you're able to do that. So let's talk Arizona basketball. First of all, I got to ask you the whole hashtag EMOY Equipment Manager of the Year. How did that all get started?
Oh, that started probably 8-9 years ago by the student managers. Andrew Payne, Trevor Derrick were two of them that, kind of a crazy guy when it comes to packing and knowing where the bags are and just hustling and just grabbing 3-4 bags, throwing on the shoulder and saying, let's get this done. So they kind of went from there and named me the Pac-12 Equipment Manager of the Year as voted on by the Arizona student managers. And they put a graphic out. Well, it somehow got on Facebook, but without as voted on by the student managers. And so all these people thought I won this award by the Pac-12, which was made up by them, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Is there an actual physical award that goes with it?
Yeah, there's actually one with the Athletic Equipment Managers Association.
Awesome.
So we're broken up between 9 different districts. And actually this year, Emily DeWillicuddy, my colleague, is the District 9 Equipment Manager of the Year. And now we're voting on the top 3, and then there's the national award is the Glenn Sharp Equipment Manager of the Year. So there's an actual award.
Okay. So let me ask you about this year's Wildcat men's basketball team, because I think this is your 10th year in Tucson.
Correct.
And you've seen a lot of very talented teams come through,
Yeah.
and some that came just short of getting to the Final Four. This team, how do they compare to some of those others you've seen just in terms of talent and just the joy of being around them, I guess?
Yeah, it's a great team to be around. They all love each other, and they're playing hard. And there's a lot of good talent. It reminds me of some of the first couple teams I was with. I got here first year, I believe it was 12-13. Solomon Hill was a senior, Mark Lyons, and then you went into Aaron Gordon, Stanley Johnson, Nick Johnson was here, Caleb. So a lot of talent. And this year's teams remind me of those because they're around each other a lot. They love each other, and they're working hard, and they're playing loose and having fun. And it's a good group. It's a really, really good group.
From an equipment perspective, how do they decide which color jerseys they're going to wear that night?
I talked to, Dalen and Kerr, Pella, those guys. I just asked, like, what do you want to wear? First couple of times I just asked everybody for the first trip, and it was like, all right, we'll wear, I think it was Navy against Illinois. So they kind of decided, now that we're back to being as what we are, sometimes the other teams dictate it, because as you saw against Washington, they wore black. When we go to Utah, they're going to wear dark. So we have to figure out, do we want to wear white or red? Colorado's reached out. Colorado's going to wear black uniforms on their senior night. So we got to wear white or red. So that's kind of how we figure it out and go from there.
Yeah, you don't think about that as a fan, and you kind of wonder. I mean, I've never gotten an answer to that, so it's pretty cool to get some insight on that. One other thing, I guess I might as well ask it in the middle of the interview because what the hell? People always ask, well, tell us about when are they getting new jerseys? What can you tell us about? Are these jerseys here for the long haul? Is there going to be a redesign at some point? And how does that process work?
Yeah, we're in the process of doing that. It's going to be here shortly, but it takes years to start the process and figure out what we want to do in terms of the whole brand of the uniform, and working with Nike and just getting they're taking our ideas and they put a kind of a spin on it, and we go from there. And the last couple of years, from Nike going to the NBA, overtaking that, and then COVID hit, so that there's a lot of delays in that. So I know the fans really want to change up, and we've been working on it, and it's coming. It'll be here shortly.
All right, Brian, let's talk some behind the scenes dirt. And I'm only half serious about that.
Yeah.
Tommy Lloyd, the transition that the players, current players and the new players had to make from Sean Miller to Tommy Lloyd. Obviously you were with Sean Miller all the way up until this past season. How do you think the players have adapted to him? Or I guess they obviously have. Maybe how have they adapted to him so quickly and so efficiently, do you think?
I think part of it's, Coach Lloyd brought in good staff that has eased the transition, keeping, good staff and the players. I mean, these are really good kids. I talked about it earlier. They're good kids, and they're willing to listen. They're willing to work hard. And that's really helped, and having Murph stay over as well, where you kind of have a familiarity with somebody, and Coach Rounds is still here along with Justin Kikoski and myself. So there's a blend of new and old, and then, bringing Jason Gardner, who's a heck of a player in his own right here. So, but his staff with Rem and Ken and Ryan Anderson and, Coach Rod, I mean, it's and Ricky. I mean, it's a great staff to be around. But these kids have listened and worked hard, and, they know how good they are. And so they want to work together and achieve their goals.
I may be stepping on Eric's toes a little bit here, but he had some very good seats for the game at ASU, and he got to overhear a lot of stuff on the court. And he said, this team, he just said it flat out, they're cocky and they talk a lot. There's a lot of swagger among this team. Is this maybe the most, let's say, confident team that you've been around during your time in Tucson?
I would say, yeah, one of them. You have to go back to Nick Johnson and TJ and Caleb, but yeah, it's a very confident team, which is good. I mean, their confidence. I mean, they back it up with the play on the court, and they're having fun. And I think that's the big thing is you're confident and having fun and just winning and being yourself.
From what you've seen and observed, because you're around it obviously a lot more than the fans are, what is the biggest difference between Tommy Lloyd and Sean Miller in their coaching style, or that you've observed even in practice?
I think they're very similar. I think Tommy's a little loose, but at the same token, I think they all have the same goals. They all want to win, and it's just a different approach of going about it. Both good coaches, and you just come to work every day and do the best you can, and similar but different.
Can you tell us what a game day is like for you? Just kind of take us through a rundown of what that day starts like in the morning and ends up like at night.
It depends what time the game is, but usually I'm here 8, 9 in the morning. Try to get a workout in before I even start the day. And then I've switched to setting the locker room up first thing in the morning, making sure, because that's when it's the cleanest, nothing's there. The managers do a tremendous job the night before getting everything cleaned up and looking nice, making sure that's all set up. So when the guys come in, it's game day. They usually come in up 5 hours before for shoot around. And so they walk in, it's like, all right, we're here to play a game. I'll get that going. And then making sure visitor locker room set up, officials locker room set up. And then, then it's kind of, if there's other responsibilities that I need to do with my other sports, I take care of that. And then we have shoot around and pregame meal, and then a little bit of a rest, and then it's game time. And then watch the game, and after the game, just get everything put away, washed, dried, and out the door.
Brian, during games, are you able to really soak it in and like kind of like almost like as a fan, especially when everyone's going crazy at McHale Center, or how do you handle yourself, especially toward the end of like really close, exciting games?
Yeah, a little bit. I definitely enjoy it, and I get excited and have a little bit of a fan still in me. But same token, I'm worried about. I'm just looking if anything's going wrong. Like, if somebody's trying to pay attention, if somebody needs a new shoe, at ASU, like Dalen's shoe busted. I can't remember if it was the second half or the first half, and I had to run up to the locker room and grab another pair of shoes for him. So I'm just focused a little more on that. But yeah, I have some fun.
My last question for you. I have to ask you about the guy that I think Wildcat fans love and hate at the same time often. And I think you probably know who I'm talking about. Kirk Risa. We had Matt Mielbach on last week, and he said, I'm going to say this in a good way, he's a little crazy. Fair statement or not?
Yeah, I tell him that too. I said, Kerr, I love you, but you're crazy sometimes. He's a really good kid. He works hard, wants to win, and has fun doing it. So
I think that's a fair way of saying it. He's fun to watch because he's on our team. But yes. If he was on the other team, can you imagine if he was on ASU?
Oh yeah, you'd hate him. You'd hate him. You love him if he's on your team, and you hate him if he's not. I think he's one of those guys.
Yeah. I make sure he knows that too.
All right. So last question for you, and thank you again, as Shane said, for joining us. Always great to catch up with you. All right. So once basketball season's done, what does the rest of your year look like?
Well, the one thing about my job that I love is I do women's soccer. So I basically start in the fall. So I go the fall into the winter sports, and basketball's year round. But come April, it's my time to take some time off and relax. And I usually try to get home to Cincinnati for a little bit. And when I'm here, I just play a lot of golf.
That's the way to do it. What's the handicap at? What's the handicap?
It's my index is about a 12.
Oh, not bad. Okay. All right.
But I play 36 a weekend if I can, 18 Saturday, 18 Sunday. And
that's the way to do it.
If it's 105, it's 105. You go out and play golf, so.
Well, that's a heck of a life. And we always, you're a great follow on Twitter. And we hope that when there are new uniforms, and maybe they'll go some retro style, you can debut some of them on Wildcat Country. At least that's kind of our hope. But thanks again for joining us, Brian. Really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.
Want to thank our guests, Aaron Torres and Brian Brigger. Great stuff, Shane. A lot to unpack from both those interviews. Check out Aaron's interview with Sean Miller on his, I'm sure there'll be a link on his Twitter page at Aaron_Torres, and Torres on Arizona. He has 2 different Twitter pages, so check that out. And always cool about that Brian joined us, and pretty cool about the uniforms. So I'm looking forward to that.
Always got some inside info here. And I'll tell you what, he's got to hook us up with Sean Miller. He needs to come on Wildcat Country. Hey, Sean, we've been defending you too. Okay. So, and look, Aaron's absolutely right though. I mean, he hasn't been pandering to Arizona. He just sees both sides of the issue, and he sees some of the hypocrisy about, some national analysts talking about how awful Arizona is while giving other schools a slide, blatantly giving other schools a slide in similar situations or even worse. So we always appreciate that about Aaron. That's why we had him on originally, and we're glad that he was able to join us again. And then Brian Brigger, it's funny how much the players absolutely love him. And I just wanted to get his side of things. And so that was a lot of fun too.
So just want to preview a few things in baseball this weekend. The team heads to the State Farm College Baseball Showdown in Arlington, Texas at Globe Life Field. Play Kansas State Friday, Oklahoma Saturday, and number 14 Texas Tech on Sunday. So best of luck to Chip Hale's squad in his debut at his alma mater, the University of Arizona.
And I want to mention real quick, Eric, we had Chip Hale on a couple of weeks ago on Wildcat Country. Be sure to check out that interview.
Yes, of course. And I'm sorry, I wish I could have done that interview with you. That was awesome. So softball team under Caitlin Lowe played Southern Utah twice, beat them 22-1 and 15-zip last week, lost to number 2 Alabama. That was a rough one.
Yeah, that was a rough one.
Beat New Mexico in a close one. This weekend, they host the Hillenbrand Invitational. They are playing UC Santa Barbara and Long Beach State on Friday, Loyola Marymount and Kentucky on Saturday, Long Beach State again on Sunday. Check that out, especially if you were down in Tucson. And the women's basketball team this weekend, going where the men's team was last weekend at the Washington schools. Shane, let's talk predictions. Start with the women. Going to the Washington schools. Are you feeling good about a 2-0 weekend? I was wrong about a 2-0 weekend.
I was going to say, I gave you your props after you predicted 5-0 between the men and the women week before last. I nailed last week. I said they're going to get a split against ASU. Not because I don't think Arizona is that good, because I think ASU is hitting its stride, and both games could have gone either way. Arizona made some enforced errors up in Tempe at the end of the game. ASU returned the favor in Tucson. I think Arizona is still firmly in the kind of on the 2 to 3 seed cusp. ESPN still has them as a 2 seed. I'm more concerned about the Washington State game. I think it's tough to get a road sweep up there, even though the men just showed how it's done. I will cautiously predict a 2-0 week. Okay. I think this team got a wake up call in terms of their defense, and I think that they're going to be a little bit better on the defensive end. They're not a team that's going to blow out a lot of people. They're just not. The Oregon game was an exception. They're not. They're very good, but they're not good enough to run away against good teams or against, average teams on the road. So I will predict a sweep, but I would not be surprised if they came back with another split. But even if they do, I think they're still firmly in that. You want to keep them in that top 4 seed line, so they're able to host a couple of NCAA tournament games. They're there, and they're in good shape with 4 games to go in the regular season. Yeah,
barring a meltdown, I don't see it happen. I don't see them losing that, but you never know. Okay, men's team. My favorite coach in the Pac-12 comes to McHale Center on Thursday, but his team stinks this year.
Oh, really bad. You wanted Wayne Tinkle, and
how'd that work out for me?
He's not doing so well.
What are they, like 4-18 or something like that?
3-18, something like that.
They're bad. I think we both can agree Arizona wins a pretty a blowout on Thursday.
You know what? I wouldn't be shocked if they fell behind by a few points in the first couple of minutes, just because of how they are. But maybe they go down 10-5 in the first 5 minutes, and then they're up by 20 at halftime. But yeah, they'll win that game easily. The Oregon game, the game day here, Oregon they beat Washington State the other night. Before that, they lost at home. They were routed at home by Cal of all teams. So they're kind of a hard team to figure out. This is Tommy Lloyd's first time playing Oregon, and Dana Altman, and is that matchup zone, that man zone hybrid he likes to play, that gave Sean Miller's Arizona team fits for a long time. This team seems to do a little bit better against the zone, but I kind of want to. I'll wait and see. I think that I can't pick them to lose against Oregon after what happened to the Ducks at home against Cal. But I am a little concerned about that game. I think that game is going to be a little bit closer than a lot of people might think. Yeah, I would agree with that. Dana Altman's the best coach in the Pac-12, and I think it'll be close. Next to Wayne Tinkle. Right.
Dana's better, even though I like Wayne more. But Dana's a great coach. Well, Tommy Lloyd, obviously number one, based on what he's done. You can't argue with that success. I think Arizona wins a fairly close one against Oregon. I think 4-0 weekend, hopefully. And it's just cool to be talking about winning teams on Wildcat Country. Want to thank our sponsors, our new sponsor, Ice Shaker. Check them out, iceshaker.com, and get these cool ice shakers. We should have them, hopefully some Wildcat Country ones for sale on there in the coming weeks. And of course, our main sponsor, Backcourt Marketing. Always appreciate, them supporting Wildcat Country. Check them out, backcourtmarketing.com, or on Twitter at backcourtmktg. Once again, our guests, Aaron Torres and Brian Brigger, thanks for joining us. And of course, for Shane Dale, I am Eric Cohen. As always, bear down.